grandfather was Vincent Raymond Dunn, and he died in 1970, a couple months before I got married. I was 23 in 1970, in April of 1970. And my grandpa was a big part of my life. Our family was close. We saw him regularly. Though he worked and was like speaking or out of town a lot of the time. My grandma, Jenny Home Dunn, was just this delightful, absolute perfect grandma who doted on everything we did and took us fun places. He had maps all over in his house and dictionaries and his old typewriter. That was the dining room was really his office, and it always was. And when us grandkids came over and my grandma would make us meals, he would be sitting right across from us with his typewriter, just working away at whatever article was being produced, watching us eat pancakes. I was always aware of various parts of what my grandfather had done and stood for. Our family talked a lot about workers and class, really, and what was going on in the world. And since there was plenty going on in the world, especially in the 60s, we talked about that a lot. And I was a teenager and remember a great deal of family dinners with Grandpa had come. By then my grandmother was, unfortunately, had passed away. And we, and he just, it was like giant discussions verging on arguments that were really great. And I always felt pretty listened to, although I did more listening than talking, I hope. My mother went to South High, and her senior year she was elected as the homecoming queen. And I said, I found this out, and I was, in high school probably when I found this out, and I went, oh my gosh, you were homecoming queen. That's cool. And she said, well, yes, I was one of the children I was one of the kids who wasn't on the college track. And she said, and because of the strikes and everything, everybody voted for me. So she kind of denigrated herself about that, but she might have been right, actually, although she was cute as a button and very personable, too. I recently was given the transcript of his trial in 1940. He was being tried for trying to overthrow the government. It was the sedition trial. And it was later overturned, I think in 1951. He spent, I think, 16 months in prison in Sandstone. I know my mom talks about riding up there to visit him with Jenny and some other relative. And it was a really long trip for them. And I read that. I'm not quite done actually yet. And so much of it sounds, I can just picture him saying it, the words themselves, because that's the way he was. He smoked constantly. And he had a way of sitting, and I can just see him saying the things that were said in the trial. And I think he really cared about people. He really wanted everybody to have a break, and he understood, he really understood that there had to be a revolution. He always talked about the continual struggle. That I do know. But I've found out a lot of things. I'm a member of the Twin Cities IWW, partly because of reading about my grandfather. And I know he'd been in the IWW before he was involved in the Communist Party and the Socialist Workers' Party and the strikes. I've belonged to a union for a long time, a business union, through my job. I'm a steward. I've been on the executive board. I'm proud to be able to, in a little way, continue the fight that my grandfather fought. I think it's still, he's obviously right about the continual struggle. Things haven't changed enough yet. No war but the class war.